The stench of burning timber filled my nostrils. My eyes flew wide. Through the rice paper of my window, an amber glow pulsed and flickered. The blaze beyond was already ravenous. Someone hammered at my door, desperate and wild. "Fourth Miss. Fourth Miss. Wake up. There's a fire. Third Mrs. Pavilion is burning." I sat bolt upright in bed, my body rigid. A dull, muffled ringing filled my ears. Then a piercing wail cut through the darkness, a voice I knew more intimately than my own breath. A voice that had stalked me beyond the grave. "Myling, little sister, please. Come rescue me." My nails drove into the quilt the 23rd day of the 9th month. My 19th birthday in the life I'd already lived and lost. My elder sister's residence, Lotus Reflection Pavilion, had erupted in flames in the deep hours of the night. The inferno had begun in the western annex and consumed half the courtyard within heartbeats. Back then, I'd acted without a second thought. I'd grabbed a cloak and sprinted. My father was away on imperial business. My stepmother, Lady Lu, had wept so violently she could barely remain upright. She'd clutched my arm and wailed, "Myling, your sister is still trapped in there." I'd tore myself from every servant who tried to restrain me. I'd plunged headlong into the roaring flames. I recalled every detail of what followed. All the way to my final gasp on earth, a blazing beam came crashing down. My sister stood near the window, screeching. I hurled her out. The beam crushed me beneath its weight. Servants charged in and dragged me free. My garments charred, my flesh blistered raw. The following dawn, they uncovered a crock of kindling oil in my chamber. My sister wept as she announced to all that she'd observed me near Lotus Reflection Pavilion just before the flames erupted. One of my own attendants, a girl I'd trusted with my secrets, knelt before my father and swore she'd overheard me mutter about how close my sister had grown to General Zheng's youngest son. My father sat in brooding silence. At last, he uttered only these words, "Myling, if you confess you acted rashly, out of petty envy, I can shield you from the worst." I refused, and so I became Zhao Myling, the malevolent fourth daughter of the Zhao household. The jealous wretch who'd set a fire to destroy her own flesh and blood. When General Zheng's son arrived to annul our engagement, I kept waiting for him to pose just one question. A single, simple question: did you truly do it? He never did. Instead, he said, "Myling, I understand you may not have genuinely intended to harm her, but Meihua nearly perished. Someone must bear the consequence." Half a year later, he wedded Zhao Meihua. I was dispatched to a remote estate far beyond the capital's walls. I lingered there for 3 interminable years. Then one of my mother's old factors secretly journeyed to see me. He brought half a crumbling ledger. Only then did I discover that nearly half the shops and acreage my mother had bequeathed me had already been devoured by the Zhao household. It was also the first occasion anyone suggested that my mother's demise might not have stemmed from natural causes. But I never survived long enough to transport that ledger back to the capital. Another fire erupted at that rural estate. My door had been barred from the exterior. Through the choking smoke, I caught a voice murmuring in the courtyard. Lady Lu gave explicit orders. The fourth miss must never return to the capital alive. Only then did comprehension dawn. From the fire on my 19th birthday, my entire existence had already been herded onto a track someone else had laid, straight toward my destruction. Fourth miss. Chunning burst into my chamber and flung open the bed curtains. "Why are you still sitting there? Third Mrs. Pavilion is ablaze." She seized my wrist, attempting to haul me outside, but I didn't budge an inch. Fourth miss. I gazed at her young, earnest countenance. In my former life, this same girl had later had both her legs shattered before being expelled from the Zhao estate. Even as they dragged her away, she'd continued sobbing that she'd never betrayed me. I never discovered whether that was truth. Seeing her again constricted my throat. But this was not the moment for questions. The entire household was in pandemonium. I rose and draped a robe over my shoulders. Chunning exhaled in relief, believing I was going to assist. But once I stepped out of my chamber, I halted abruptly. A long covered gallery connected my courtyard, Jade Pavilion, to my sister's Lotus Reflection Pavilion. Lanterns swayed beneath the eaves up ahead. Flames had already devoured the rooftop. Thick black smoke billowed toward us in rolling waves. I could hear roof tiles splintering from the intense heat. Myling, my sister shrieked again. I'm here, little sister. Come save me. Servants scurried around us in panic. Hurry. Rescue third miss. Fourth miss, you and your sister have always been so close. Please think of something. At those words, I nearly guffawed. So close, sisterly devotion in my former life. Those identical words had propelled me step by step into the inferno. My sister was delicate, so I had to yield. She coveted one of my jade hairpins. I handed it over. She desired my carriage. I let her take it. Later, she wanted my betrothal. Everyone still insisted I should step aside. And eventually, they wanted my life. Even then, they told me it was because we were kin. I raised my head. A stone pillar stood nearby. Chunning was still calling. Miss. I shut my eyes. I didn't waver. I drove my skull into the pillared crack. Agony erupted through my cranium. I heard Chunning scream. Fourth miss. Darkness engulfed me entirely. My final thought was simple. Zhao Meihua. This time, find your own way out. When consciousness returned, the chamber reeked of pungent medicinal herbs. Pain throbbed across my brow. Several faces hovered above my bed. My father, Zhao Chongyuan, sat nearest, his jaw locked tight. Lady Lu's eyes were swollen from weeping. She dabbed at them endlessly with a silk handkerchief. Beside her sat Zhao Meihua, bundled in a heavy fur cloak. Her hair was disheveled. A small red mark blemished the back of her hand. Other than that, she appeared completely unscathed. I nearly laughed aloud. In my former life, I nearly perished shoving her through that window. Apparently, without me, she could fend for herself. Myling. My father frowned. You're awake. I blinked. Father. My voice emerged thin and fragile. The physician announced. Fourth miss struck her head forcefully, but fortunately the bone isn't fractured. She simply requires rest. Lady Lu rushed in. Thank heaven. Thank heaven she's conscious. Then she cast a glance at Zhao Meihua. My sister's eyes instantly glistened with tears. She approached my bedside and took my hand. Little sister, I was so petrified last night. I kept calling out for you. Why didn't you come rescue me? The chamber fell silent. The identical words as in my former life. Back then, she'd been the one lying in bed, frail and entreating. She'd ask me, little sister, I kept summoning you. You stood outside the courtyard for so long. Why did you hesitate before entering? One sentence had swiveled every gaze toward me, but this time, I was the one in bed. I studied her for a protracted moment, then inquired softly, Sister, how did you know I was supposed to go in and rescue you? Her hand went rigid. My father's brow knitted. Myling. Your sister barely escaped the blaze. Why pose such a query? I dropped my gaze. I'm simply puzzled. I was in my own courtyard last night. I detected smoke and grew frightened. So I dashed outside. Then I struck the gallery pillar and lost consciousness. With such a massive fire raging, how did sister know I'd even left my chamber? Lady Lu's expression flickered almost imperceptibly. Zhao Meihua promptly began weeping. I was terrified. I heard people outside shouting your name, so I assumed my little sister would surely come to my aid. She squeezed my hand. Myling, we're sisters. I regarded her red-rimmed eyes, then slowly withdrew my hand. Yes. Fortunately, sister escaped on your own. Otherwise, when I awoke, I might have blamed myself eternally. Her mouth tightened. She'd clearly not anticipated that rejoinder. At that moment, a cool male voice drifted in from without. Marquis, the Court of Criminal Inquiry has been requested by the capital authorities to investigate last night's conflagration. My heart lurched. I swiveled toward the entrance. A tall, lean silhouette stepped across the threshold. Dark judicial robes, a silver belt, keen, composed features. He appeared about 26 or 27. I'd encountered him in my former life. Lin, Assistant Minister of the Court of Criminal Inquiry, the Imperial Bureau charged with serious offenses, After the fire in my former life, he'd been the sole individual who'd declared, "The evidence is insufficient. A judgment should not be rendered hastily." But my father had refused to allow a family scandal to become public. He'd suppressed it entirely. I never saw Lin again. He entered the chamber. His eyes swept over the burn on Zhao Meihua's hand, then settled on the white bandage wrapped around my forehead. Finally, he inquired, "Where was fourth Miss Zhao when the fire broke out?" Before I could reply, Chunying blurted, "My lady was in her own courtyard the entire time. She'd barely rushed outside when she struck the pillar and collapsed." Lin looked at me. No pity, only clinical scrutiny. "Why did you hit the pillar?" I met his stare. After a pause, I said, "Because I was frightened of perishing." The room seemed to grow even more hushed. Lin studied my visage. "Someone who's frightened of perishing would deliberately run into a stone pillar." I said nothing. He didn't press. Instead, he pivoted to my father. "A fire of this magnitude is no trivial affair. 2 young ladies were nearly harmed. We will proceed with due investigation." Lady Lu spoke up instinctively. "Lord Lin, surely it was merely an accident involving lamp oil." He cut her off. "Whether it was lamp oil will be determined after we investigate." He looked at me once more, just fleetingly, but I understood immediately. He didn't accept my account of accidentally striking the pillar. But he didn't expose me either. Ashes from the fire still floated in the air outside. Lying in that bed, I sensed for the first time that the road I'd already trod once had finally veered onto a different path. I didn't yet know that the first true blade hadn't fallen. Because that very evening, my father's stewards searched my storehouse and discovered half a crock of kindling oil. The oil crock was placed before my father while I sipped bitter medicinal draught. Chunying's face went pale with fury. "That isn't from our courtyard. This servant inspects the storehouse daily. I've never laid eyes on that crock before." My father sat at the head of the main hall. The gray-black clay vessel rested beside his hand. Zhao Meihua leaned against Lady Lu, her eyes still moist. The aged servant who'd supposedly unearthed the oil knelt below. "Marquis, I truly discovered it in the corner of 4th Mrs. Storehouse. It was wrapped in ancient cloth." My father looked at me. "Smiling, what do you have to say for yourself?" He'd asked me the identical question in my former life. Back then, I'd still been burned. My whole left arm swathed in white bandages. I knelt in the hall and wept while striving to explain. I said I hadn't kindled the blaze. I said I'd never glimpsed the oil crock. I said my sister was mendacious. The more I explained, the more desperate I sounded. This time, I sat completely immobile, let Lord Lin investigate it. My father paused. I pivoted toward Lin, who stood to one side. "The Court of Criminal Inquiry is already engaged. Please scrutinize this crock as part of the case." Lady Lu's gaze sharpened. "Smiling, this remains a domestic affair." "Why must—" "Mother," I interrupted softly. "If sister hadn't been fortunate last night, she could have perished. If I truly ignited that fire, I should face punishment. But if I did not," I paused, "then the person who planted that oil in my courtyard should be uncovered as well." Lin glanced at me. "4th Miss Zhao is correct." My father looked displeased. "Lord Lin, this concerns 2 unmarried daughters. If word spreads," Lin replied evenly, "Rest assured, Marquis. The court investigates arson, not the private affairs of young ladies." My father had nothing to say, then Zhao Meihua whispered, "Father, perhaps I misremembered." Everyone looked at her. She bit her lip. "Before the fire commenced last night, I believe I glimpsed my sister." Lady Lu immediately asked, "Meihua, what did you see?" She shook her head. "I'm uncertain. I only recall a silhouette outside my window." She hesitated. The figure resembled Miling. My father's face darkened further. "Miling." I set down my teacup. "When did sister see me?" Zhao Meihua faltered. "Probably sometime after the second watch. I don't recall clearly." "What attire was I wearing?" She blinked. I looked at her. "If sister observed me, you must have noted what I was wearing." Her face paled. "It was so dark. How could I discern that? Then how did you determine it was me?" She fell silent. Was anyone accompanying me? Which direction did I come from? How long did I stand beneath your window? Were my hands empty? Or was I carrying something? I pressed. If sister recollects distinctly enough to assert it resembled me, surely you remember something else. Her eyes instantly brimmed with tears. Are you interrogating me? I smiled. Of course not. Sister just endured a terrible shock. I'm only concerned your memory might be clouded. After all, once people hear the words resembled smiling, they may overlook the rest. Lady Lu quickly interjected. Enough. Mei Hua is frightened and confused. Smiling, don't take it personally. I nodded. I won't. Lord Lin can simply record it in the case file. No one spoke. The corner of Lin's mouth twitched almost imperceptibly, as though he were suppressing a smile. My father looked from me to Zhao Meihua. His expression grew uglier by the moment. Suddenly, Chunying dropped to her knees. Marquis, this servant has something to declare. My father snapped. Speak. After dinner yesterday, fourth miss was in the Buddhist hall transcribing sutras. Madam had stated old Madam's birthday was approaching and requested fourth miss to copy the Heart Sutra as a blessing. Lady Lu stiffened. Chunying continued. Mama Chun and Mama Jiao at the Buddhist hall both witnessed her. Fourth miss remained there until nearly the second watch. She returned to her courtyard, and less than 15 minutes later, someone began shouting that Lotus Reflection Pavilion was ablaze. She drew a breath. Even walking briskly, a round trip from Jade Pavilion to Lotus Reflection Pavilion consumes time. My lady couldn't possibly have gone there and ignited the fire. I lowered my eyes. This testimony hadn't existed in my former life, because that evening, I truly had visited Lotus Reflection Pavilion. My sister had sent me a jade hairpin that afternoon, inquiring which gown would complement it. I'd gone over before dusk. That was why her later claim that she'd seen me had seemed so credible. But in this life, I'd been reborn before supper. The first thing I did was instruct Chunying to relay word that I had a headache and wouldn't visit. Then I proceeded to the Buddhist hall. I needed witnesses. Lin immediately summoned Mama Chun and Mama Jiao. Their accounts aligned perfectly. My father's expression relaxed slightly. But the oil crock remained. Lin picked it up and inspected it. Then he asked, does the household typically store oil in vessels like this? The steward shook his head. No. Our lamp oil is kept in small cellophane containers. Lin handed the clay crock to one of his clerks. Ascertain who vends these in the capital. Lady Lu could no longer restrain herself. It's merely a clay crock. There must be thousands in the capital. Lin replied, then we'll question thousands. She fell silent. I lifted my eyes. Our gazes locked. Her expression remained warm, still the countenance of a caring mother, yet I recalled the words I'd overheard outside the rural estate in my former life. Lady Lu's orders. Fourth miss must not return to the capital alive. Who precisely had that lady been? ID died without beholding her face. Now the answer seemed closer than ever. That evening, Lin passed by my courtyard before departing the estate. I was sitting beneath the covered gallery, letting the night breeze cool my brow. He halted outside the gate. Fourth Miss Zhao. I rose. Lord Lin. He glanced at the bandage on my forehead. That wasn't a trivial injury. I survived. He was quiet for a moment. Then he abruptly inquired, are you truly afraid of dying? I looked at him. Who isn't? Someone afraid of dying might choose to strike a pillar, but not at that angle. My fingers tightened. He lifted his chin slightly. You impacted the side of the gallery pillar. That portion would absorb the least force. It would bleed. It could render you unconscious, but unless you were exceptionally unlucky, it wouldn't end your life. Cold sweat broke across my spine. He knew. I remained silent for a protracted moment. What does Lord Lin wish to ask? Only this. His gaze was steady. Whom exactly were you trying to elude? I didn't answer. He didn't push.
If you prefer not to tell me, fine.
But if you know something, don't wait until the next fire is blazing before you speak. Then he departed. I watched his retreating form. For the first time, I realized this man was much more challenging to deceive than I'd remembered. That same night, the Court of Criminal Inquiry traced the oil crock. It originated from an oil shop in Mulberry Lane in the western quarter of the capital, an establishment that usually supplied theater troops. The shopkeeper recalled the purchaser. It wasn't me. It was the nephew of my sister's wet nurse. Her wet nurse's surname was Sunday. She'd served Zhao Meihua for more than a decade. When her nephew Sun Bao was brought into the Zhao estate, his limbs were trembling. My sister's face went ashen. Lady Lu was the first to speak. Could there be some misunderstanding? Lin didn't respond. He simply brought the oil shop proprietor forward. The man identified Sun Bao instantly. That's him. He arrived a few days ago and purchased 2 crocs. Sun Bao began kowtowing frantically. It wasn't me. I was merely running an errand. Lin asked, for whom? Sun Bao's lips quivered. He didn't dare raise his head. My aunt. The hall fell into dead silence. Mama Sun dropped to her knees. Marquis, it wasn't this servant. This servant only. Before she could complete her sentence, Zhao Meihua started weeping. Mama Sun, why did you purchase fire oil? Mama Sun looked up at her. The look in her eyes was intricate. I observed it clearly. My sister's crying ceased for a split second. Then, as though comprehension dawned, all color drained from her visage. Lin said, proceed. Mama Sun finally prostrated herself on the floor. This servant merely wanted to incinerate some rats in the western annex. My father emitted a furious laugh. You bought 2 crocs of fire oil to burn rats. She had no retort. Lin didn't press her immediately. Instead, he ordered several pieces of charred timber and debris from Lotus Reflection Pavilion brought into the hall. There was something anomalous about the scene last night, he said. There were 3 separate points of origin. The first was the western annex. The second was the flowering trellis near the main chamber. The third, he looked up, was the side entrance. My sister jerked her head upward. The side entrance. Lin looked at her. Third, Miss Zhao wasn't aware. She shook her head. No. At the time, I only perceived flames in the west. I observed her quietly. This time, she wasn't performing. She genuinely hadn't known it. Lin continued. The 2 crocs Sun Bao purchased were insufficient to generate a fire of last night's magnitude. Someone added additional fuel to the initial blaze. The air in the hall seemed to congeal. Cold slithered along my spine. Even though I'd known from my former life that Lady Lu might have desired my death, hearing the evidence articulated aloud still felt like wading into icy water. My sister had genuinely intended to harm me, but someone else had also intended to exploit her scheme to eliminate me. My father's countenance was grim. Lord Lin is suggesting this was premeditated arson. At least 2 distinct parties were involved. Lin said. I looked at my sister. She was staring back at me across half the hall. For the first time, I discerned the same thing in her eyes that she must have perceived in mine. Fear, not of each other, but of the person who hadn't yet been unmasked. But I averted my gaze first. Fear altered nothing. The fire she'd started was still intended for me. Mama Sun, I spoke. Are you still refusing to speak the truth? Her body trembled, but I didn't shout. I only said quietly, there's a distinction between arson that damages property and arson that nearly claims a life. If you intend to shoulder someone else's crime, you should first consider whether you can bear its weight. The last trace of color abandoned Mama Sun's face. She suddenly pivoted and slammed her forehead against the floor before Zhao Meihua. Young lady, this servant has failed you. My sister closed her eyes. Tears trickled down her cheeks. Speak. Her voice was scarcely audible. Mama Sun sobbed. It was young lady who instructed the servant to procure the oil. My father shot to his feet. Meihua. My sister flinched. Lady Lu immediately rushed over and enveloped her in her arms. Explain yourself. How could Meihua possibly command you to commit arson? Mama Sun wept so violently, she could barely draw breath. Young lady didn't say she wanted anyone killed. She only said she only wanted to intimidate fourth miss. My father roared, how Mama Sun didn't dare respond. So I answered for her. Sister planned to ignite a small fire. Then she would summon me to enter. And once I stepped into the courtyard, General Zheng's son would just happen to arrive. My sister gaped at me. Genuine panic flickered in her eyes. How could you? I smiled. Just a conjecture. Sister asked me a few days ago whether General Zheng's son cared deeply about a woman's reputation. Now that I reflect on it, you probably weren't inquiring without purpose. My father's face turned livid. Mei Hua, my sister finally shattered. I didn't mean to kill her. She leaped to her feet. I only wanted General Zheng's son to see her emerging from my courtyard. I only wanted everyone to misinterpret her. The fire wasn't supposed to grow that large. Her shoulders shook violently as she sobbed. I genuinely didn't want her to die. Lady Lu held her tightly. You foolish child. My father's face turned purple with fury. I sat there, oddly tranquil, an answer I'd questioned for 3 years in my former life. An answer I'd perished without receiving. It had arrived so swiftly this time. Yet it didn't feel as gratifying as I'd imagined. Perhaps some wounds had already ceased to ache in my last life. After too long a silence, after a protracted silence, my father finally uttered quietly, "This matter concludes here." I raised my eyes. What did father say? He looked at me. Mei Hua acted foolishly in a moment of weakness. She didn't intend to end your life. The person who enlarged the fire hasn't been identified yet. If this becomes public, her entire future will be destroyed. I laughed softly. What if I had started the fire? My father froze. I held his gaze. If I were the one kneeling there today, if sister had nearly been burned to death because of me, would father still assert that I'd only made a foolish error? He said nothing. Lady Lu interjected hurriedly, smiling. Your sister has always been frail. She is frail. I cut her off, so her offenses count for less. Or because I am robust, is my existence worth less than hers? Her face whitened. That isn't what I mean. Then what does mother mean? It was the first time I'd cornered her so directly. Lady Lu regarded me for a protracted moment. She couldn't formulate a reply. I pivoted to my father. Last night, I split my forehead open. Everyone told me sister had been terrified and implored me to understand. Today we discover she truly devised a scheme against me. And father still requests my understanding.
What about me?
As long as I endure, am I always the one who must yield? My father opened his mouth. Finally, he said only, You are sisters. Something inside me turned utterly cold. He'd uttered nearly the identical words in my former life. The only distinction was which daughter he was sacrificing. That last time, he instructed me to confess. This time, because it was Zhao Mei Hua, he instructed me to remain silent. He didn't truly favor either of us. He simply selected whichever daughter was simpler to sacrifice. That I rose. Lord Lin, investigate the remainder according to the law. Smiling, my father bellowed. I didn't glance back when I departed the hall. That Lin followed. Angry, he queried behind me, No, you're walking very briskly. I halted, because I'm afraid I'll turn around and start cursing people this time. Lin actually smiled, only faintly. So, fourth Miss Zhao curses people too. I pivoted. Are you disappointed, Lord Lin? No, he said. I was only contemplating. You might feel better if you actually did it. I was quiet for several breaths. Lord Lin, did you examine the side entrance? His expression instantly grew grave. The lock had been replaced. The original could be opened from within. The one used last night could only be secured from outside. My fingertips went icy. In my former life, I'd entered through that side entrance later. As the flames intensified, I'd been unable to open it. If General Zheng's son hadn't arrived when he did, I would have perished in that inferno. My sister wanted to destroy me. But another person had never intended for me to survive at all. Lin watched my face lose color. Fourth Miss Zhao, do you know who it is? Lady Lu's eternally gentle countenance flashed through my mind. After a moment, I shook my head. I have a suspicion, but until I possess evidence, I know nothing. Lin studied me. Good. I blinked. What is good? At least you're no longer using your own skull as proof. My father still managed to suppress most of the scandal surrounding Zhao Meihua's involvement. Lin didn't close the investigation, but because the person who'd intensified the fire remained unidentified, the court recorded only that Mei Hua had instructed servants to improperly use fire oil. My father expended considerable effort emphasizing her poor health and the shock she'd endured. For the moment, the matter remained within the Zhao estate. I didn't intervene to stop him. Destroying my sister immediately might sever the trail, leading further back. More importantly, I wanted to observe what Lady Lu would do before she made her move. However, General Zheng's son arrived when I met him in the side hall. He looked precisely as he had in my former life, a pale moon-hued robe, handsome, composed features. He frowned when he noticed the bandage on my forehead. "How did you wound yourself so gravely?" I regarded him. I had cherished this man for years. In my former life, our families had arranged the betrothal when I was 15 and he was 17. In spring, he'd sent me painted fans. In winter, he'd broken orchid blossoms from the branches for me. I'd always believed I would wed him. So, when he dissolved our betrothal in my former life, the deepest anguish hadn't stemmed from losing the marriage. It had stemmed from realizing that the man I'd believed would always stand beside me had never truly credited my word. Now, beholding him again, I felt only estrangement. "I'm much improved." General Zheng's son seated himself. After a moment of silence, he said, "I heard about Mei Hua." I smiled. News travels swiftly to young Master Zheng. His expression stiffened. "I was only concerned about both of you. Were you, Miling?" He frowned. "Why are you addressing me in this manner?" I didn't respond, he continued. "Mei Hua was indeed in error this time. But she only acted thus because she cares too deeply about me. She has always been frail and sensitive. You—" I abruptly laughed aloud. He stopped. "What are you laughing at?" "Nothing." I lifted my tea. "Your words merely sound familiar. In my former life, after my sister framed me, he'd also claimed she was merely sensitive. She merely lacked security. Every cruel act Zhao Meihua committed seemed to come with a pitiable justification. My suffering received only one response. You should comprehend." Young Master Zheng lowered his voice. "Miling, I know you've suffered. But if this matter continues to expand, it will damage the Zhao family's standing and yours." I looked at him. "So, young Master Zheng came today to persuade me not to pursue this further." He didn't answer. That was answer enough. I set down my cup. "Fine." Visible relief crossed his face. "I'm glad you're willing to think rationally. However," I looked directly at him, "there is one other matter I've contemplated." "What?" "Let us dissolve the betrothal." For a moment, he seemed not to comprehend. "What did you say?" I articulated each word distinctly. "Let us annul our betrothal." His expression finally shifted. "Miling, don't utter something like that because you're vexed." "I'm not vexed. I've simply reflected on it. If you believe sister's actions are understandable and you're so solicitous of her, then there's no need to make yourself suffer." I smiled. "This betrothal, I no longer desire it." He stared at me for a protracted moment. He said nothing. I stood. "I will request father to discuss the cancellation with your family. If the Zheng family finds it awkward to be the one to withdraw, then the Zhao family can propose it first." I turned away. Young Master Zheng suddenly seized my wrist. "Zhao Miling." I glanced down, as though scalded.
He released me.
But his voice had grown darker. "Are you doing this deliberately because of Mei Hua? Do you imagine I'm enamored with her?" I looked at him. "Whom young Master Zheng loves has no bearing on me. I have merely discovered that some things I once deemed precious are not worth much at all." His face darkened completely. I didn't grant him another opportunity to speak. I departed. My father erupted when he learned I wished to terminate the betrothal. "Nonsense. Do you comprehend what kind of family the Zhengs are? This marriage has been arranged for 5 years. You imagine you can end it simply because you feel inclined." I stood in his study. "What would father prefer? That I still wed a man who came here to plead for my sister? Young Master Zheng is merely tender-hearted. Then let him be tender-hearted to the conclusion." My voice remained level. "Sister likes him. Would that not be ideal?" My father's head snapped up. He'd clearly not expected me to voice it so openly. "You, father, my sister coveted my fiancé. So she ignited a fire to injure me. My fiancé learned what she did, and the first thing he did was not inquire whether I was hurt. He came to beg me to forgive her. If father deems such a man excellent, then let sister have him. My father's visage shifted from blue to white. For a protracted interval, he couldn't formulate a reply. I turned to depart. Behind me, he uttered coldly, "Do not regret this later." I paused. I didn't glance back. I won't. I regretted enough in my former life. This time, regret would not belong to me. 3 days later, the betrothal was formally dissolved. The Zheng family initially demurred. My father also didn't wish the reputation of reneging on a long-standing agreement. In the end, I had someone discreetly mention Zhao Meihua's involvement in the fire. The message was simple: agree to the cancellation, or we could discuss everything openly. The Zhengs acquiesced swiftly. That afternoon, I visited a jewelry shop, one my mother had bequeathed me, to inspect its ledgers. On the return journey, I encountered Lin at the entrance of a lane. He descended from a carriage. "Fourth Miss Zhao." "Lord Lin, what brings you here?" "An investigation." He glanced at the shop behind me. "You dissolved your betrothal." I raised an eyebrow. "Does Lord Lin investigate that as well?" "The entire capital is discussing it," he said. "After all, it was a 5-year betrothal. You relinquished it easily." I smiled. "Why would I hesitate over something worthless?" Lin stared at me. Then the corner of his mouth lifted. "Fourth Miss Zhao, you truly have an intriguing manner of insulting people." I blinked. "When did I insult anyone? You didn't." He nodded seriously. "But if young Master Zheng heard that, he might prefer an actual insult." He walked past me into the lane. I stood there. Then, despite myself, I laughed. And only after I ceased did I realize something. It was the first time since my rebirth that my laughter hadn't been intended to mock anyone. Something had simply amused me. Zhao Meihua remained unwell for 7 days. On the 8th, she came to see me. I was airing several of my mother's old account ledgers in the courtyard. She wore a pale cloak and had visibly lost weight. Chunying moved to intercept her. I lifted a hand. "Let her approach." My sister advanced to the table. Her eyes fell on the ledgers. "You're investigating concubine Lin's." She halted. I raised my eyes. "My mother." Zhao Meihua pressed her lips together. "I didn't intend. Whatever you do now, I imagine nothing would surprise me." She seated herself. For a lengthy interval, neither of us spoke. Finally, she asked quietly, "Do you despise me?" "Yes." She clearly hadn't anticipated such a direct reply. Her eyes instantly reddened. Smiling, "I genuinely never meant for you to perish." "Then what did you intend?" She looked up. I answered for her. "You wanted my garments scorched and torn. You wanted young Master Zheng to bear me out. You wanted fire oil to be uncovered in my chamber. You wanted everyone to accept that I'd ignited the fire because I was envious of you. You wanted the Zheng family to cancel my betrothal. And then you wanted to approach him as the injured party." The color steadily drained from her face. "How do you, sister?" I smiled faintly. "Your thoughts are not difficult to divine." She lowered her head. Tears dripped onto the back of her hand. I waited." She bit her lip. "Since we were children, everyone instructed you to yield to me. The finest fare came to me first. I selected from the prettiest textiles first. When you learned to ride, I could only sit by the window and observe. You could accompany father to the autumn hunt. I couldn't even depart the estate without spending 3 days recuperating afterward. And then you had young Master Zheng." Her voice rose. "Why did you receive everything?" I listened quietly. "So you coveted what I possessed?" She raised her eyes. "Yes." "And because you coveted it, you were permitted to harm me." She said nothing. I continued, "Sister, have you ever noticed? Everyone has yielded to you for so long that you began believing others were in error whenever they refused." Her face looked as though I'd struck her. "I didn't. You did. You wanted my hairpin, I gave it to you. You wanted my carriage, I let you have it. You wanted young Master Zheng, you didn't consult me. You ignited a fire, because in your mind I already possessed so much. What difference could one more concession make?" Her tears fell even more profusely. I felt no tenderness. These were her decisions, yet when I thought she was about to depart, she suddenly raised her head. I did not secure the side entrance. My gaze sharpened. I know. Her fingers trembled. I only asked Mama-san to purchase 2 crocks of oil. The timber in the western annex was damp. I calculated it. At most, a small section should have burned. I even positioned a ladder outside the window in advance. But that night, her breathing accelerated. The flames surged inward all at once, and the side entrance wouldn't open. I nearly perished. What are you attempting to convey? Someone intended to exploit me to end your life. Her voice quavered. Or perhaps eliminate both of us. I didn't respond immediately. She stared at me, smiling. We're sisters. I laughed. Now you recall we're sisters. Her face went pale. Sister. I interrupted. You being exploited by someone and you harming me are 2 distinct matters. I will not pretend your cruelty never occurred merely because someone cruel stood behind you. Her tears ceased for the first time. Genuine humiliation appeared on her countenance, not wounded self-pity. The humiliation of having no defense. After a long interval, she whispered, "Then what do you wish me to do?" "Remain alive," I said. "Then inform Lin of everything you know." "Why?" "Because the person who truly endeavored to kill me hasn't been discovered." I looked at her. "And you may not be safe either." After she left, I sat in the courtyard for a lengthy interval. Chunning placed another cloak around my shoulders. "Miss, will you aid?" "Third miss." "No," I said. She created her own calamity. She can bear it herself. Chunning hesitated. "But what if someone truly attempts to kill her?" I looked up. "I will deliver the evidence to the Court of Criminal Inquiry. Preserving her life is the responsibility of the authorities and herself. I owe her nothing." I had to constantly remind myself of that again and again. At that night, Lin arrived. He brought something with him, a key, aged and worn. The character Lin had been carved into its stem. My breathing halted. "Where did you unearth this?" "At a silk emporium in the southern quarter. The shopkeeper's surname is Gu. He said your mother deposited it with him before she died. It was meant to be presented to you when you turned 17. But the Zhao estate replaced several old factors afterward. He feared to come forward." I closed my fingers around the key. The cold bronze pressed into my palm. "What did you ascertain?" "This shop," Lin said, "was supposedly transferred to the Zhao family 10 years ago. But the original deed in the government archive doesn't bear your mother's signature." I looked up sharply. "The Zhao family, your stepmother's family." The night wind swept through the covered gallery. I suddenly recalled the words of my mother's old factor in my former life. "Fourth miss, your mother left you far more than the Zhao household ever disclosed." Lin watched me. "Do you wish to view it now?" "Now." I didn't hesitate. "Yes." The shop in the southern quarter was already shuttered for the night. Manager Gu was past 60. The instant he beheld me, his eyes reddened. "Fourth miss, you bear such a resemblance to Lady Lin." My throat constricted. I couldn't articulate. He guided us into the rear courtyard and opened a dusty chamber. An aged cabinet stood within. I unlocked it with the key. The cabinet appeared empty, but beneath the lowest panel was a concealed compartment. I reached inside. My fingers brushed a stack of papers. The first sheet I withdrew was inscribed in my mother's hand. Only one sentence. "When Meiling is grown, never permit her entire dowry to fall into the hands of the Zhao family." My hands began to tremble. Lin stood outside the doorway. He didn't enter. I glanced back. "You aren't coming in?" "No." "Why?" He glanced inside. "This is a place your mother reserved for you. You haven't granted me entry, so I won't." My nose suddenly stung. In my former life, everyone had always declared we're family. Why divide what belongs to whom? So my mother's wealth could be appropriated. My betrothal could be surrendered. My grievances could be interred. Even my existence could be forfeited if that preserved the family's harmony. Yet this man, whom I'd known for mere days, stood beyond the threshold and informed me, "This belongs to you. Without your consent, I will not touch it." I lowered my head. For the first time, I understood how simple respect could be. That there were 3 items in the concealed compartment. The first was my mother's complete dowry register. The second was a collection of original land deeds. The third was a letter that had never been dispatched. I opened the dowry register first. The further I read, the colder my hands became. The dowry inventory the Zhao household had eventually bestowed upon me contained 18 fewer assets than my mother's original record. 2 jewelry shops, 1 apothecary, 400 mu of fertile farmland, 2 estates beyond the capital. All absent, 5 of those properties were now registered under the Zhao family, and Manager Gu said quietly. Lady Lin uncovered irregularities in the accounts back then. She once planned to return to Jiangnan. Then she abruptly fell ill. I looked up. What illness? I don't know. She simply grew weaker and weaker. Lady Lin had always been robust before. Later, she could scarcely leave her bed. My fingernails dug into my palms. Did she ever summon a physician from outside? Manager Gu nodded.
Yes.
But the physician was never permitted into the inner residence. The Marquis declared the household already had its customary doctor. He claimed it was improper for an outsider to examine a woman of the inner chambers. I said nothing. I opened the unsent letter. It was addressed to my maternal grandfather. Only half a page had been inscribed. Father, your daughter has recently detected irregularities in the household accounts. Several property deeds appear to have been falsified. Zhao Chongyuan's dealings with Lady Lu are far more extensive than I previously understood. The medicine I have been consuming also tastes peculiar. If anything should befall me, please remove Myling from this place. The letter ended there. The final stroke of ink trailed across the page, as though the writer had abruptly lost the strength to continue. I stared at it. I didn't realize I was weeping until a tear landed directly on the characters of my own name. I hastily wiped it with my sleeve. I only smeared the ink further. Manager Gu turned away. Lin remained outside. I gritted my teeth. I didn't wish to cry, but everything entombed in my chest across an entire former life seemed to have finally discovered a fissure. My mother died when I was 8. Everyone assured me she'd simply been unwell. My father held me and said that birth, aging, sickness, and death were natural. Lady Lu entered the household later. She treated me kindly, at least on the surface. She never withheld my food or clothing. When I fell ill, she sent medicine. In winter, she inquired whether my charcoal supply was adequate. So, I'd never conceived that she might have had any involvement in my mother's death. I'd never conceived that my father might already have known how deeply entangled she'd been. I sat inside that chamber for a lengthy interval. Only after my tears subsided did I carry the papers outside. Lin observed my reddened eyes. He asked nothing. Return, he said. Not yet. I drew a breath. I wished to inspect the government archives to examine the deeds. Yes, tomorrow. Why not tonight? Because the archive office is closed. I looked at him. Lord Lin cannot enter. I can, he said. But what you are investigating is private property, not a criminal matter. If I escort you into the archives in the dead of night, tomorrow anyone could allege I tampered with the evidence for you. I froze. Lin continued. 4th Miss Zhao, if you intend to triumph, don't furnish your adversaries with a reason to claim you won dishonorably. I stared at him, then slowly nodded. All right. He turned to depart. I followed 2 steps. Lin. It was the first time I'd addressed him by name rather than title. He halted and looked back. Thank you.
He studied me.
For what? For not investigating everything for me. It sounded peculiar, but he comprehended. What belongs to you, he said, you should reclaim with your own hands. I only ensure no one overturns the table while you do it. I laughed. What if they truly try? The corner of his mouth lifted too? Then, that is my concern. The following day, I inspected the government records. Every original deed enumerated in my mother's register was authentic. Several documents now held by the Zhao family, however, contained forged signatures. One was especially absurd. The date on the transfer document was 3 months after my mother's death. A deceased woman had apparently vended a shop. It was so preposterous it was almost comical that I returned to the Zhao estate with copies of the records. I didn't immediately confront Lady Lu. Instead, I began investigating the estate accounts, which proved challenging. My father refused, insisting that an unmarried daughter had no authority to interfere in the public finances of the household. I didn't argue, because I never truly cared about the Zhao family's accounts. What I wished to examine was the income generated by my mother's dowry over the past decade. I dispatched people separately to several shops that remained officially registered under my name. I located 2 more former factors who'd served the Lin family. Piece by piece, I reconstructed my mother's property during that period. Then Zhao Meihua received another piece of intelligence. Young Master Zheng wished to wed her. A Chunying brought the news while I was scrutinizing an account ledger. Young Master Zheng formally dispatched a matchmaker to solicit second Mrs. Han today. My fingers paused. So swiftly. Yes. Chunying looked incensed. Miss, how can he do this? He used to. I looked up. Our betrothal is concluded. He may marry whomever he desires. Chunying stamped her foot. But I smiled. Let her wed him. It's advantageous. It genuinely was. I wished to observe something. My sister had sacrificed almost everything to appropriate this man in my former life. This time, without my dowry sustaining their marriage, would he still merit half a lifetime? On the day her betrothal was confirmed, Zhao Meihua came to see me. She wore a new peach-hued gown and appeared healthier than she had in days. Smiling, I know you probably don't wish to see me. I continued perusing my ledger. Then why have you come? She bit her lip. Young Master Zheng. I looked up. Congratulations. Whatever address she'd prepared perished in her throat. You aren't angry. Why would I be? He was originally yours, originally. I smiled. Not now. My sister stared at me as though attempting to determine whether I was merely pretending indifference. I closed the ledger. If you came only to apprise me of this, I already know. Anything else? She remained quiet for a prolonged interval. Then she said, Young Master Zheng truly wishes to wed me. He isn't selecting me only because you spurned him. Fury finally appeared on her face. Why do you care about nothing? I looked at her. Sister, would you prefer that I care? She said nothing. I smiled. You labored so diligently. You ignited a fire. You framed me. You nearly incinerated yourself. And now you've finally obtained what you coveted. If I truly do not care, should you not be relieved? She opened her mouth and closed it. Did you come here hoping to witness me distressed? I asked quietly. Did you wish to observe my suffering so you could feel triumphant? Her face went pale. I shook my head. I'm not going to grant you that satisfaction, sister. You wanted him. You have him. May you both be exceedingly content together. I returned to my ledger. She stood there for a protracted moment. Then she departed without another word. Chunying entered afterward. Miss, are you truly not upset? I looked up at her youthful visage. In my former life, this girl had been broken and expelled for my sake. I'd never learned whether she'd truly betrayed me, but this time, she was still here. I smiled. I've endured worse anguish than losing a man who never believed in me. That's all in the past now. She didn't fully comprehend, but she nodded anyway. Beyond the window, the orchid blossoms were beginning to fall. Some things couldn't be altered, but others, I was learning, were not inexorable at all. I gazed down at my mother's letters, at the evidence I'd assembled, at the path that was gradually opening before me. The person who'd endeavored to kill me was still out there. The person who'd murdered my mother might still be walking free. But I was no longer the girl who rushed headlong into flames. This time, I would be the one bearing the torch. Doesn't that render everything you've done rather foolish now? The color drained from her cheeks. Zhao Meiling, for the first time, she shrieked my full name. I nearly found it entertaining. Yes, her chest heaved. Don't you dare. I cut across her. I'm not daring anything. I'm simply reminding sister, since you craved him so desperately, make certain you never live to lament it. She sneered. I won't. Excellent. I dropped my gaze to the ledger. Take care of yourself. After she exited, Chunying wrestled with herself for a moment before erupting into giggles. Miss, when did you become so adept at provoking people? I raised an eyebrow. Did I? Yes. Perhaps I remained silent for too many years. 3 days later, young Master Zheng appeared. I declined to receive him. He lingered outside Jade Pavilion for nearly an hour. Eventually, I permitted him to stand beneath the gallery. He looked at me. Mei Hua came to see you. Yes. What did she say? Something concerning you, he frowned. Smiling. Must we converse in this manner? I laughed. How else like before? You brought me orchid blossoms and I stitched pouches for you, his expression flickered. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean, young Master Zheng? He was quiet for a long stretch. When I marry Mei Hua, I'm not attempting to humiliate you. I know she erred because of me. If I cast her aside now, she'll be destroyed. I laughed again. So, wedding her is your noble act of salvation. Young Master Zheng's brow creased. At least I should bear some responsibility. Responsibility. I tasted the word on my tongue. What a splendid word. In my former life, I nearly perished in flames. He declared someone must bear responsibility and place that burden on me. In this life, my sister kindled the blaze. He declared he must bear responsibility and married her. This man always knew how to drape his choices in honorable language. I regarded him. Young Master Zheng, do you believe that if a reason sounds noble enough, selfishness ceases to be selfish? His jaw tightened. What are you implying? Nothing. I wish you endless contentment. He stepped closer suddenly. You truly feel nothing at all. I lifted my eyes. Young Master Zheng, she didn't take you from me. I discarded you. His face went pale. I said no more. There was nothing more to say that on Zhao Meihua's wedding day, the entire Zhao estate buzzed with activity. My father refused to let outsiders sneer at us, so the ceremony was lavish. Lady Lu stuffed every valuable she could lay hands on into my sister's dowry chests, including 2 sets of ornaments that had been my mother's. Before the dowry departed the estate, I intercepted it. Lady Lu's expression curdled. Smiling. Today is your sister's wedding. These 2 sets have sat in storage for years. Mei Hua adores them. Mother. I had Chunying bring my mother's dowry register. 1 set of crimson gold lotus ornaments. 1 set of kingfisher feather pieces, set with southern pearls. Both are recorded clearly here. Dowry of Lady Lin, not Zhao household property. And not sisters. Lady Lu forced a smile. We're all one family. What does it matter who wears what? I smiled back. Then why not use mother's own resources to supplement sister's dowry? Her smile froze. Several noblewomen who'd come to see the bride off were already casting glances our way. I had no intention of causing a scene at my sister's wedding. I simply extended my palm. Return them. Lady Lu had no choice. She ordered the servants to remove the 2 ornament sets. When Zhao Meihua emerged from her chamber, she witnessed it unfolding. Her face darkened and I said only, joyful union. She bit her lip. She said nothing. I watched the bridal sedan depart the Zhao estate. There was none of the anguish I'd carried in my former life. Instead, I felt unburdened. She'd finally won the man she craved most, and now I could observe whether this flawless marriage would remain respectable without Lady Lin's fortune propping it up. The answer arrived within a month. The Zheng family sent someone to ask my father whether the 2 estates and 1 jewelry shop originally pledged when they'd arranged my betrothal would now be folded into Zhao Meihua's dowry. My father's face went slack on the spot. When I heard, I simply found it amusing. So, what the Zheng family had truly been loath to lose had never been me. It had been the chest of silver and gold behind me. Unfortunately for them, that chest remained in my hands. What they'd taken was an empty shell that my father came to Jade Pavilion himself for the first time. He didn't waste words. The estate east of the city under your mother's name. Yield it to Meihua for now.
I kept scanning accounts. No.
His face darkened. That estate was intended to be part of your dowry. You've dissolved the Zheng betrothal. You don't require it at present. I finally looked up. So sister should have it. She married into the Zheng family. Her dowry is too meager. Besides, he hesitated, when the Zheng family originally discussed the match with us. With me, I corrected. Not sister. His face grew stormier. You are both daughters of the Zhao family. I smiled. But the estate belongs to the Lin family, not the Zhao family. My father slammed his palm on the table. Zhao Meiling. Once your mother married into this household, everything she owned became Zhao property. I regarded him in silence. That sentence finally elucidated everything. Why he'd spent my mother's money, without guilt, after she died. Why he treated my dowry as the Zhao estate's private coffers. Why, after I was banished in my former life, those properties had been carved up so swiftly. Because in his mind, from the day my mother wed him, she'd forfeited any right to independent ownership. I slowly drew a document from the cabinet. I placed it on the table. This is the independent dowry agreement registered with the government when mother married into the Zhao family. It states everything plainly. All properties remain under Lady Lin's sole authority. After her death, they pass to her biological daughter, Zhao Meiling. I raised my eyes. Father, this isn't yours. His expression twisted instantly. Where did you find that? That question told me more than any denial could. He wasn't shocked the document existed. He was shocked I discovered it. The last shred of hope I still held toward my father crumbled. You knew? I asked softly. You knew all along. He didn't respond. He no longer needed to. I stood. Then this will be simpler. Starting today, all properties under mother's name will be fully separated from the Zhao household accounts. My father erupted. You dare? Why wouldn't I? You're not married. You're still a daughter of the Zhao family. And I looked at him. Does being a Zhao daughter mean I can't own property? Does it mean I must use my mother's money to support everyone else? Father, have you ever counted how much silver you've drained from mother's shops over the years? His face turned iron gray. That money kept the household running for more than a decade. Nothing was ever returned. I smiled. What a remarkable form of temporary borrowing. I lifted another ledger. The Western Apothecary, for the 3 years before mother died, it earned 4,000 taels annually. After her death, the recorded profit dropped to 1,300. Where did the rest vanish? The 2 estates beyond the capital, they generated 3,000 taels in yearly rent. The Zhao household books record only 1,000. Enough! My father roared. His face no longer showed just fury. There was fear. I lowered the ledger. No, it's not enough, father. This is only the commencement. It took me half a month to reclaim every surviving property still legally belonging to Lady Lin. I replaced stewards, changed bookkeepers, swapped seals, and halted every customary payment from those businesses to the Zhao estate. Within a month, the household spiraled into chaos. The kitchen began buying supplies on credit. Scholars supported by the estate arrived demanding their stipends. Lady Lu could no longer produce the second portion of Zhao Meihua's promised dowry. The most striking aspect was this. No one had ever realized the Zhao household was living on my mother's money. Lady Lin's silver had flowed silently into every corner of the estate for so many years that everyone simply accepted it as normal. Only when I abruptly withdrew it did they grasp how much of the dignity of this supposedly ancient noble house had been upheld by a woman dead for a decade. Lady Lu finally came to see me. She remained gentle. Meiling, all this recent activity of yours, is it because you still resent me? I looked at her. For what? For Meihua's marriage and the fire. She sighed. I know you were wronged, but families share a life together. You can't tally every small thing so precisely. I almost laughed. I'd heard that line too many times in my former life. We're family. Don't keep score. So your money belongs to everyone. Your grievances get swallowed. Your betrothal gets handed over if your sister fancies it. Even your life, if sacrificing it preserves the family's peace, perhaps that's acceptable too. I regarded Lady Lu. Mother is right.
She paused.
Clearly, she hadn't anticipated agreement. So, I've decided to calculate once and for all everything that's been left unresolved. The warmth on her face evaporated. I pushed a list toward her. Your birth family, the Lu household, has taken possession of 5 Lin family properties over the years. 3 transfer documents were supposedly signed after my mother died. Lady Lu's face stiffened. What are you implying? How does a deceased woman sign a contract? I raised my eyes. I'm curious as well. She stared at me. The maternal warmth flickered out for one instant. I finally glimpsed the face hidden behind all that tenderness. After a moment, she smiled again. Smiling, some old accounts are better left buried. I smiled too. Then we'll see who suffers more when they're unearthed. After she left, Chunying was quiet for a long time. Finally, she whispered, "Miss, Madam looked terrifying just now." I lowered my head and continued sorting deeds. She'll grow more terrifying, because she knows I'm closing in on the secret she fears most. And when someone has concealed a secret for more than a decade and suddenly realizes it might be exposed, they act. That was precisely what I was awaiting. I deliberately fabricated a false ledger, supposedly recording every medicinal purchase during the final 6 months of my mother's illness. I planted a manufactured receipt from an old apothecary inside. Then I arranged for Manager Gu to casually mention in the Zhao accounting office that records of Lady Lin's medicine might still exist in the old southern shop. Less than 2 days later, someone broke into the shop. Unfortunately for them, Lin's men were already lying in wait. They caught a steward from Lady Lu's birth family red-handed. When the news reached the Zhao estate, Lady Lu finally lost her composure. She marched directly to Jade Pavilion with servants trailing behind her. Smiling, "Surrender the account book." For the first time, she didn't bother with pretense that I sat behind my desk. "What account? You know precisely what I mean." "Why would Mother think I know?" She glared at me. "Your mother has been dead for a decade. Why are you excavating these matters? What do you truly desire?" I smiled. "To discover how she died." Lady Lu's eyes shifted for a fraction of a second. I caught it. She died of illness. Did she? Everyone knows that. Apparently not everyone. I withdrew the unsent letter. Lady Lu's face went white. She recognized my mother's handwriting. "Where did you obtain that?" "That's not important. What matters?" I read aloud softly. "The medicine I've been consuming tastes different. If anything should befall me, please take Miling away." Lady Lu stepped back. "Forgery." "That's fabricated." "Then let it be examined." I said. "We can locate individuals who knew Mother's script. The Lin family's former factors. The government records bearing her genuine signature. Whether it's authentic or false can be established." Lady Lu stared at me. I stared back. For one fleeting moment, I desperately wished to ask her, "When my mother was dying, were you afraid when you tampered with a living woman's medicine? Did you ever imagine that one day her daughter would stand before you?" I swallowed the questions. She wouldn't answer them now. What I required was evidence, not the satisfaction of one frightened confession. At that moment, my father hurried into the courtyard. He observed Lady Lu's expression, then the letter in my hand. His steps faltered for only an instant, but that instant confirmed everything for me.
He knew something.
Perhaps he didn't know precisely how my mother perished, but he absolutely knew that before her death, she'd suspected Lady Lu, smiling.
He spoke heavily.
"Give me that letter."
"No."
"I am your father." And the question halted him cold. I rose. "Father, did you already know Mother discovered the forged deeds?" His face contorted. "What nonsense are you spouting? Then why are you so afraid of my investigation? Because family scandals shouldn't be exposed to outsiders." "Whose scandal?" I stepped toward him. "Mother's or yours?" Zhao Miling. Father raised his hand. I didn't flinch. But the strike never landed. Someone at the entrance caught his wrist. Lin. I hadn't even heard him arrive. He released my father. His expression was cool. "Marquis, striking a witness would be ill-advised." My father snapped. "She's my daughter." Lin replied. "She's also a witness in an arson investigation. Commencing today, the Court of Criminal Inquiry will assign guards to protect fourth Miss Zhao." I stared at him. My father grew even angrier. "The court is overstepping its bounds." Lin replied mildly. "Someone broke into a shop containing crucial evidence last night. The intruder was a steward from Lady Lu's family. If the Marquis believes this shouldn't be investigated, you're welcome to argue that before the court." My father fell silent. Then Lady Lu asked suddenly, "That steward, what did he say?" Lin looked at her. "Madam seems concerned." She forced a smile. He serves my family after all. Oh. Lin nodded. Then you may be reassured. He's very obstinate. Lady Lu visibly relaxed, until Lin added. Unfortunately, the soles of his shoes were covered in the white stone powder used only in your courtyard. So I suspect he'll become less obstinate soon. All color drained from her face. After they departed, I noticed blood on Lin's sleeve. You're injured. Nothing serious. Let me see. No need. I looked at him. Lin. He was quiet for a moment. Then he rolled up his sleeve. A shallow knife wound crossed his forearm, probably from apprehending the intruder the previous night. I instructed Chunying to fetch medicaments. Then I bandaged him myself. Lin watched me lower my head over his arm. Fourth Miss Zhao. Do you bandage every person you collaborate with this carefully? I didn't look up.
No.
Then am I exceptional? Only those who compensate. He fell silent. I thought he'd let the matter drop. A moment later, a silver ingot landed on the table. In that case, please be even more meticulous. My hand stopped. I looked up. His expression was utterly serious. I laughed before I could help myself. Lord Lin, you are occasionally exceptionally exasperating. The sentiment is mutual. This time there was no fire beyond the window. Only the faint bitterness of medicinal herbs in the chamber. And suddenly, I felt perhaps this life might finally contain things that had nothing to do with enmity. When Zhao Meihua returned to her maiden home 2 months after her wedding, she was so gaunt I almost didn't recognize her. All the spirit she displayed on her wedding day was gone. I hadn't intended to receive her. She stood outside Jade Pavilion for a long while. Finally, she said only, I have something for you. I permitted her entry. She sat for a long time without speaking. I poured tea. Does the Zheng household treat you poorly? She laughed. It was an ugly sound. They keep hounding me about my dowry. They ask when father will send the estates originally promised to you. I wasn't surprised, she continued. My mother-in-law said if she'd known I brought nothing, she'd never have agreed to the match. So swiftly. Her eyes reddened. Young Master Zheng has altered too. He wasn't like this before. I looked at her. Before you possessed a dowry, her expression tightened. I didn't press. There was no necessity. Zhao Meihua lowered her head for a long time. Then she drew a tiny folded paper from her sleeve. She slid it across the table. This was given to me the day before the fire. By Mother. I unfolded it. There was only one line. Follow the original scheme. Lure Meiling into the courtyard. You need not concern yourself with what transpires afterward. My heart slowly congealed. You preserve this. Yes. Why didn't you surrender it? She said nothing. I looked at her. Because if you did, it would prove you were implicated too. She closed her eyes. Yes. At least this time she didn't weep and hunt for justifications. I queried. Back then, did you ever wonder what transpires afterward meant? Zhao Meihua's hands began to quiver. After a long silence, she said, yes. Something heavy pressed against my chest. Then why did you proceed? She started to cry. But this time, her voice was subdued. There was none of her usual calculated fragility. Because I thought if something truly happened to you, would everything become mine? I stared at her, as she sobbed harder. Meiling, I know I'm despicable. But in that moment, I genuinely thought, if you were gone, young Master Zheng would be mine. Father would cherish me more. And the things your mother left, perhaps some of them would come to me. I understood the side entrance shouldn't have been secured. I understood the fire appeared wrong. But at the time, she covered her face. I still didn't raise the alarm. The chamber held only the sound of her weeping. And at last, I understood precisely what she was. She'd been a pawn on a chessboard. But she'd known someone might perish on that board. And she'd still executed her move. Because the person who might perish wasn't her. I folded the paper. I won't absolve you. Her crying ceased for a moment. I continued. I never will. She dropped her head. I know. But I looked at her. If you're willing to apprise the authorities of everything you know, I'll ensure you survive long enough to face the consequences that belong to you. She raised her eyes. What do you mean, arson? Framing me?
You committed those acts, so own them.
Lady Lu wished to kill me. Whatever you know, disclose all of it. For the first time, genuine terror appeared on her countenance. She's my mother.
I know.
So you can decline. I pushed the tea toward her. Return to the Zheng household. Continue being their young mistress. And await her to pin every portion of the fire on you. Zhao Meihua jerked her head up. What are you saying? I didn't respond at that moment. Someone hurried into the courtyard. Fourth Miss, intelligence from the Court of Criminal Inquiry. The Lu family steward confessed. He said Madam ordered him to prepare a written statement. She intended to place all blame for the Lotus Reflection Pavilion fire on Third Miss and Mama Sunday. The teacup slipped from Zhao Meihua's hand. It shattered. She sat completely still for a very long time. Then she laughed. And as she laughed, tears streamed down her cheeks. So, she can cast me aside too. I didn't console her. I only found it bitterly ironic. My sister had been favored for so long that she believed she would always be the exception. Only when life and death were at stake did she finally learn. The person Lady Lu cherished most had always been Lady Lu. That evening, Zhao Meihua accompanied me to the Court of Criminal Inquiry. She confessed to igniting the original fire. She confessed to the scheme to frame me. Finally, she surrendered Lady Lu's note. When we emerged, night had descended. She stood on the stone steps. Suddenly, she queried, "Miling, why did you strike the pillar that night?" My steps halted. I was frightened of fire. You're lying. I pivoted. She stared at me. You acted as if you already knew what was going to occur. My heart tightened, but I only smiled. Sister, sometimes when someone has been deceived enough times, she doesn't need to foresee the future. She only needs to finally accept that the people around her truly are capable of harming her. She stared. I turned away. Lin was waiting at the base of the steps. He handed me a lantern. Return to the estate. I took it. Yes. We walked a short distance. Then he said, "You conducted yourself well today. How you didn't relent." I looked at him. You thought I might. I didn't know, he said. But when individuals confront evidence, even with the evidence directly before them, they often begin inventing justifications. I was silent. I already expended an entire lifetime inventing justifications for them. The words slipped out before I could prevent them. I immediately recognized my error. Lin looked at me. I corrected myself swiftly. More than a decade. He didn't challenge it. He only said, "Then cease." What? Inventing justifications. The night wind brushed past us. His voice was subdued. People who genuinely wish to treat you well don't require you to explain away their actions. My fingers tightened around the lantern handle. For a long time I said nothing, but something inside my heart shifted, just perceptibly. The day Lady Lu was taken away, my father panicked for the first time, not merely because she might be imprisoned. The Court of Criminal Inquiry had also sealed several accounting rooms in the Zhao estate. Every old deed and ledger connected to Lady Lin's dowry was seized for examination. Initially, Lady Lu denied everything, but there was too much evidence. The Lu family steward confessed that on the night of the fire, under Lady Lu's orders, he'd prepared another 4 crocks of fire oil. He'd also arranged for someone to replace the side entrance lock at Lotus Reflection Pavilion. Lady Lu's precise words had been, "Once Fourth Miss enters, don't permit her to emerge again." Mama Sun confirmed that Zhao Meihua's original scheme had never involved securing the gate. 2 factions. 2 schemes. At last, every piece of the conflagration fit together. The investigation into my mother's demise took longer. The aged woman who'd prepared her medicaments had been dispatched to the countryside years ago. Lin searched for nearly half a month before locating her. She was already past 60. The instant she beheld Lady Lu's portrait, she began trembling. She related that during the final 6 months of Lady Lin's illness, Lady Lu had instructed her to add a powdered substance to the original prescription every day. The dosage was minute, but after consuming it, Lady Lin grew increasingly enfeebled. Later, one physician cautioned that something was amiss with the medicaments. My father still didn't halt it. because Lady Lu asserted, elder sister has been unwell for so long. Altering her treatment now would only injure her further. The aged woman had known nothing of medicine. Later, because she'd witnessed too much, she was wedded off to a distant location. The court requested several imperial physicians to reconstruct and analyze the original prescriptions. They confirmed that the powder wouldn't slay a healthy person immediately, but prolonged consumption could severely damage an already compromised constitution. My mother hadn't perished from a single bowl of poison. She'd been eroded day by day. That revelation was even crueler than I'd anticipated, because it meant that during those 6 months my father had observed. Even if he hadn't comprehended what the powder would ultimately affect, he knew Lady Lu was interfering with his lawful wife's treatment. And he remained mute. When I went to see him, he appeared a decade older. Smiling, I genuinely didn't know that substance could end her. I looked at him. But you knew Lady Lu was altering Mother's medicaments. He said nothing. You knew Mother discovered forged deeds. You knew she intended to return to the Lin. And you knew Lady Lu. And you had already... I paused, then finished quietly. Become far too enmeshed. My father's countenance was ashen. I only wished to suppress the matter. I never desired your mother to perish. I laughed. Father, isn't that your favored refrain? I didn't mean for her to die. I didn't mean to hurt you. I only did it for the Zhao family. I had no alternative. As long as you weren't the one physically holding the blade, nothing that occurred was your responsibility. For the first time, I perceived anguish in his eyes. Smiling, must you despise me this intensely? I regarded him, and suddenly realized I didn't loathe him anymore. True disappointment contained no fire, no tears. When I looked at him now, there was simply emptiness. Father, I don't despise you. He stared. I continued. But from this moment forward, you don't need to be my father either. His face went white. I pivoted and departed. In the end, Lady Lu was convicted of conspiring in Lady Lin's death, attempted murder by arson, forging legal documents, and unlawfully seizing property. Members of the Lu family who participated in the forged transfers were punished as well. Zhao Meihua also had to answer for deliberately igniting a fire, attempting to destroy my reputation, and framing me. But she later confessed voluntarily. She'd also surrendered critical evidence. Her sentence was therefore not severe. The Zheng family rushed to arrange a mutual dissolution from her. Not because she'd committed an offense. The genuine reason was simpler. Once every Lin property was reclaimed, they would receive nothing from her. Worse, they were ordered to return 2 shops they'd acquired inexpensively through the Zhao family over the years. The Zheng family had never been as wealthy as outsiders imagined. The losses struck them severely. Young Master Zheng came to see me after every case had concluded. He stood outside one of the former Lin shops. He appeared much more haggard than before. Smiling, I didn't permit him entry. Is there something you require, young Master Zheng? He laughed bitterly. I'm uncertain I can still be addressed as young master. The Zheng household had descended into conflict over its financial losses. His father was also under investigation over falsified contracts. Whether the title would even pass intact to young Master Zheng's generation had become uncertain. Then, young Master Zheng, what do you need? He looked at me for a protracted interval. I used to think you were merely obstinate. Now I understand you're much more resilient than I ever comprehended. I said nothing. He continued. If Meihua had never, there's no if. I interrupted him. Young Master Zheng, my sister didn't appropriate you from me, and the fire didn't sunder us. You made your own decisions again and again. You selected whichever side advantaged you most. His face went pale. I looked at him tranquilly. So, even without Zhao Meihua, we would never have reached the conclusion together. You lament things now only because you discovered that the person you discarded is prospering more than you. That's not affection. I turned. Don't return. He called my name behind me. I didn't glance back. In my former life, I'd waited for years for him to turn around. In this life, it was my turn to depart. And I would not turn around even once. Part 16. The new commencement 1 year later, 7 of the Lin family shops had reopened. I didn't preserve every ancient property simply because it had belonged to my mother. I vended the two least profitable establishments. With the proceeds, I launched a new spice enterprise. Initially, Lynn didn't comprehend. Why dispose of ancestral property? I sat behind a counter calculating accounts. Because they incur losses. Ancestral property can incur losses, of course. I assumed you would preserve all of it. For what purpose? I looked up. So I can venerate it daily and announce to everyone my mother bequeathed it to me. She left these things because she wished me to live well, not because she desired me to spend my existence lamenting over old possessions. Lynn considered that reasonable. I gave him a suspicious look. Why is Lord Lynn so agreeable today? Because everything you utter is correct. My abacus speed halted. You weren't like this previously. Previously, we were merely collaborating. And now, I looked up. Our eyes met. His gaze was too direct. I averted mine first. Nothing has changed. He nodded. Then tomorrow I'll notify Prince Rue's household to carry the betrothal gifts back. My head snapped up. Don't you dare. He finally laughed. During that year, we'd never exchanged dramatic vows. There'd been no grand declaration. After the cases concluded, he simply kept arriving. When I inspected shops, he accompanied me. When his duties permitted, he was present. When he returned late from an investigation, someone would often appear with a parcel of roasted chestnuts I favored. Once he was wounded. Fearful I would fret, he concealed it for 2 days. When I learned, I genuinely quarreled with him for the first time. You instructed me not to sacrifice myself for you. Then what authorizes you to determine for me what I should know and what you should conceal? He remained silent for a prolonged interval. Finally, he said, I was in error. ID prepared an entire discourse. Those 3 words nullified all of it. You admit it promptly. Not promptly, he said. I simply still desire to wed you. I shouldn't obstruct my own path. I hurled the medicinal salve at him. My face remained heated for half an hour. 3 months later, Prince Rue's household formally came to propose marriage. I didn't immediately consent. My father attempted to interfere, utilizing his status as my elder. But this time, no one could make the determination for me. My dowry was in my own hands. The marriage contract required my assent. Even Lynn came to inquire first. Are you willing? Not. I will marry you. Not. You must marry me. Only are you willing? I was. So I wedded him. That was all. Before the nuptials, I received a letter. There was no name on the exterior. Chunying said it had arrived through a courier station from Jiangnan. I opened it. I recognized Zhao Meihua's handwriting. After serving her punishment, she departed the capital. She didn't return to the Zheng family, nor did she return to the Zhao estate. I heard she followed Mama's son to Jiangnan and sustained herself with embroidery. My father had dispatched individuals to locate her. She refused to return. The letter contained only a few lines, Miling. That night, you didn't enter the fire to rescue me. At the time, I resented you. Later, I reflected, if you had truly entered, perhaps neither of us would possess the lives we have today. You didn't save me. But for the first time, you saved yourself. I finished perusing. Then held the paper above a candle. The flames seized one corner. Gradually, the characters disappear. Chunying observed. Miss, do you genuinely never intend to absolve third miss? No. Do you still detest her? I pondered for a moment. No. Some individuals don't require absolution for you to release them. What she did will always have occurred. The wounds she inflicted didn't cease to exist merely because her subsequent life became arduous. But I no longer require enmity to remind myself to continue living. Ash fell into the bronze basin. I stood, then opened the casement. Spring had arrived. The crab apple blossoms in the courtyard were resplendent. Lynn stood beneath the gallery, awaiting me. He wasn't attired in judicial robes today, only a simple blue-green garment. He looked unexpectedly youthful. What were you burning? Ancient things. You could bear to, I smiled. Why wouldn't I? He extended his hand. I regarded it. I didn't immediately accept it. Where are we going? To try on your bridal gown. You're attending my wedding. Why shouldn't I? I laughed. Lynn, Since when does the groom accompany the bride to try on her wedding attire? His expression didn't alter. Since now. In the end, I placed my hand in his. We walked out of the courtyard. A thread of cooking smoke ascended in the distance. My steps halted instinctively. Once, I'd been terrified of fire. The sound of wood cracking, the smell of smoke, even the faint singed scent after a candle was extinguished at night could summon both blazes back. The first, I rushed into to rescue my sister and forfeited my reputation, my betrothal, and 3 years of my existence. The second slaughtered me in a secured chamber at the rural estate. Even as I perished, I'd still wondered, what had I done wrong now? For the third time, I perceived smoke, and I could stand there placidly. Lin noticed. He didn't query. He only tightened his hand around mine. I suddenly recalled the night of my rebirth. The flames ascending to the heavens. My sister shrieking, "Myling, little sister, rescue me." In my former life, I heard that cry and sprinted in without deliberation. In this life, for the first time, I halted and asked myself, why was I required to rescue her? Why did I have to bear the consequences of other individuals' errors? Why did everyone instruct me? You are compassionate, so endure a little more. You are robust, so yield a little more. You are the younger sister, so you should lower your head first. I had to perish once to comprehend. True benevolence is not immolating yourself so others can perceive their path more distinctly. That night, I didn't save Zhao Meihua. I ran into the pillar. I collapsed, blood covering my brow. Everyone believed I'd gone mad. But reflecting now, perhaps it was the most lucid decision I'd made across both lifetimes. Because I didn't walk into that fire. I didn't become the easiest person for them to sacrifice again. I protected what my mother left me. I discovered how she perished. I reclaimed the existence that should always have been mine. And finally, I encountered someone who would never request me to destroy myself to prove that I cherished him. Lin walked beside me, clasping my hand. Sunlight covered the gallery. It was almost unbearably temperate. I suddenly called his name, Lin. If there's ever another conflagration, will you rescue me? He looked at me. No. I halted. He continued. I'll drag you as far from it as I can. Then I'll summon individuals to extinguish it. I stared, then laughed aloud. Why? Lin held my hand firmly. His expression was grave. Because a fire can be quenched, a person cannot live twice. My eyes suddenly stung. Fortunately, he didn't know, some individuals truly did live twice. And this time, I'd finally rendered my second existence worthy of having the spring wind stirred through the courtyard. Crab apple petals blanketed the steps. I didn't glance back, because the existence that belonged to me had only just commenced.